Hello, it's Kate Griffiths here, coming on because I wanted to talk to you today about the next chapter in our book. So we're up to chapter 3 in Philosophy for Life. So if you haven't been reading, or you're not part of our book group, or you weren't able to get in, this is a great opportunity to get a flavour of what the book's about. And this is the second of 3 chapters about the Stoics, but it's very different from last week's chapter, which you can catch here on my YouTube channel. This one has a very weird title, so I'm not even going to tell you the title because I don't think it really helps. But I absolutely loved this chapter because there was so much that really resonated for me, especially at this time where we sit in a place in the UK and in the world in an era post-pandemic, but where things are still pretty uncertain. And it's really has surprised me the number of people that have had the vaccine almost unquestioningly. Now, I'm not pro or anti. What I'm interested in is there being a real discussion and a debate about the pros and cons. And that hasn't really been possible with the dominant narrative. Now, how does that relate to Stoicism? Well, there's a very interesting thing that was said by Michael, who's not anyone that any of us have ever heard of, but he was one of the Green Berets in the US and was interviewed by Jules Evans, who has written this book. And he basically said that, most people make decisions automatically based on social convention. And that's why I think it's, really relevant to what's going on with the vaccine, because there's a sort of an assumption that everyone's going to have it. Or you've had your 2, are you now onto your booster? There's no questioning, no sort of space to see what sits in between. And in it, he says, so if you make decisions in that way, and if you know the biases which affect that person's particular beliefs and their social convention, then actually you can use that to manipulate them into making a decision that suits you or doing what you want them to do without them even being aware that you've done that. Now, that's pretty scary stuff, isn't it? But it's not that far from the reality in some respects of what we see. Fortunately, however, we're not just 3D. We're not just here in the third dimension. We have a higher self as well as a personality. And so that's the whole point, really. I mean, you might think meditation is woo-woo, but the point of going in and connecting and then receiving guidance, call it divine guidance, guidance from the universe, whatever, because then you're less likely to be manipulated in that way. So I wanted to start with that. And there are a couple of other things that really caught me and grabbed me in this chapter. And first is that philosophy, it can be seen as a form of training. And so the fact was that a lot of the ancients, including Rufus, who's one of the people that they talk about in this chapter, who's not a philosopher that many of us have probably heard of before, and Epictetus, who was his student, really believed in physical endurance and really pushing the body to its limits. So like you might do in terms of physical fitness and going to the gym, or as I have been doing for the last month, I've been part of boot camp. So 3 times a week, I do 45 minutes to an hour. Excuse me. In the park, doing different kinds of exercise to build up my fitness. And many of the ancient philosophers also believed that this was important. It wasn't just about wisdom and reading things and mental endurance. In fact, mental toughness came from really working your body, and that sense of inner freedom comes when we're kind of really aware of our body. And it talks a lot about the Spartans and the regime that young boys went through from the age of 7 to 14, and it seems unbelievable to us today in terms of the way that we bring up our own children. But there was lots in it that really resonated with me. So this idea about if we control what we eat, so we can, I probably wouldn't go as far as saying food is just fuel. For me, food is a pleasure and it's something I enjoy. But do we actually need 3 meals a day? I live by the 16-8 philosophy. So for 16 hours roughly, then I don't eat, and then I eat in an 8-hour window. But others have done, just one meal a day and then maybe a 4-hour window. And there's a lot of research that shows that you shouldn't really be eating after 7 o'clock in the evening to give your body time to digest what it's eaten. There's something about growing used to, when the Stoics talk about growing used to hunger and living with hunger, and similarly with cold and heat and stuff like that, because the more that we can be in that way, then the less we are controlled by our bodily functions. And then that's what, I guess, links us to, considering that relationship with mental toughness, mental fitness. So it really, really resonated with me. And it goes on and looks at sort of, that you might have bad habits, things that you really don't want to do anymore. And part of the way that we deal with that is by journaling. Even if you don't really like writing, but just the act of sitting down and in this chapter they talk about Marcus Aurelius, who was quite a well-known philosopher, and was around in a period of great happiness for the Romans. As one of the emperors that brought about its most prosperous stage, and he did a lot of journaling. And what they talk about is this ability to be flexible with your mind, to see more than one perspective, when going, oh, it's not fair, or this has happened, or whatever. Crap things happen to everybody, to all of us. We all have things we have to come to terms with. So can we do it with a smile and go, well, this is just how the cookie crumbles, and actually there's something good coming, even if we can't see it right now. That's not part of the Stoic philosophy. It's part of my philosophy that kind of sweetens some of those grim moments. And it's quite interesting because I was reading something else, and it really links to that quite often, you have a breakdown before you have a breakthrough. So everything starts going wrong and you get fed up and frustrated, or you can do. And that prolongs the period of resistance or awful things happening. But if you can relax and go, okay, well, there's something really good coming, or I'm obviously in the middle of an upgrade, it's oh so much easier to get through that sort of less than easy time. So that's kind of my thing, I guess, with it. But what the Stoics are saying is like, well, okay, if you got an anger problem, so can you go one day without losing your temper, and write that down? Now can you make it 2 days? And keep building on that. And then if you get to 30 days of not acting out in your old way, the old habits, the old behaviours, then for epatitis, that was the magic number. You'd cracked it and you'd formed a new habit and a new way of being. And that's what I really like, I suppose, about the Stoics, is it's that you can have everything, and to get there, quite often it takes a degree of hard work, a degree of commitment to show up each day and to work on that. And I think, there is something, it may not be sexy today to be into self-discipline, but there is something about being focused and going for it, knowing what it is that you want. So I think there's a lot to be gained from reading this chapter. So really recommend, if you're struggling with the book at the moment and going, well, I haven't read anything for a while, I hope listening to this video, you'll get back into it and get on it. And then maybe think about something you want to try. So for me, I've given up boot camp, but now I'm committing myself to doing at least 2 meters every 3 times a week on the ergo. So 2 meters of rowing, and then to improving my time and getting faster and so on, whilst maintaining a good form. So that's one thing I'm doing. And the other thing that's in the back of my mind, which I haven't committed to yet, but I am really tempted to give it a try, is to go from doing 2 meals a day to simply having 1 meal a day. And I know that will be a challenge, but actually think about how much more time I would have to do other things if I only ate once a day. And so it's that, positive reinforcement I think we sometimes need to introduce a new habit. So that's me, and that's what I'm thinking about. And I'd love to know what you're thinking of doing. So feel free to leave a comment below the video, or if you're part of our Telegram group there, and I'll certainly come back to you. And I'm cheering you on. So wherever you are, have a fabulous week, and I hope to see you soon and speak to you soon. Lots of love.